Welcome to Ring Oscillator. This device, while seeming to have reliable controls, might produce some unexpected outputs. In 1 minute and 45 seconds, I will begin to say a monologue, but until that point, please experiment with the model in front of you. If two people are pushing the same part at the same time, it may not move the way you expect. Even if it's just you, it still might not behave as desired. As well, in the upper right-hand corner is a button that can take you to what is being said, and if you so choose, it will allow you to control it as well. Becoming. Franny's dream as recorded by Deleuze and Guattari. There is a desert. Again, it wouldn't make any sense to say that I'm in the desert. It's a panoramic vision of the desert. And it's not a tragic or uninhabited desert. It's only a desert because of its ochre color and its blazing, shadowless sun. There is a teeming crowd in it, a swarm of bees, a rumble of soccer players, or a group of Tuareg. I'm on the edge of the crowd, at the periphery, but I belong to it. I am attached to it by one of my extremities, a hand or a foot. I know that the periphery is the only place I can be, that I would die if I let myself be drawn into the center of the fray. But just as certainly if I let go of the crowd. This is not an easy position to stay in. It is even very difficult to hold, for these beings are in constant motion and their movements are unpredictable and follow no rhythm. They swirl, go north, then suddenly east. None of the individuals in the crowd remains in the same place in relation to the others. So I too am in perpetual motion. All of this demands a high level of tension, but it gives me a feeling of violent, almost vertiginous happiness. Liberation. In 1970, an article was published titled On Male Liberation, which calls for an end to the need for men to dominate, whether it be in an economic environment or a social one, and to work with the women's liberation movement to undo systems of oppression and make an equitable world. Some of those ideals are finally being achieved, such as easier male access to parental leave. But at the same time, the movement was unfortunately too short-lived to create a new model of masculinity that took hold in the zeitgeist. Instead, the movement split. One group focused on prevention of and education surrounding sexual assault, while the other took on increasingly anti-feminist views, ultimately leading into the modern manosphere. Identity 1. I am a student. Periphery. Throughout my life, I have frequently found myself on the periphery of groups that I am a part of. This isn't really bad. As a rather introverted person, it helps me maintain my social battery, but sometimes it really wears. I have frequently been ignored, or a person I'm talking to has turned to someone else in the middle of a sentence. I have certainly done the same, and I don't hold blame, but it was an active effort to become the more conversationally proactive person I am now. Identity 3. I am a designer. Archetypes. I have embodied the journeys of a number of archetypal figures, from the warrior to the maiden, and they gave me new perspectives of the traits I've adopted. Oddly enough, the ones I am connected most strongly with were either female or genderless. And yet, I still firmly identify as male. Identity 6. I am an enemy to others. Celibacy. Alana's involuntary celibacy project created a space for individuals of a wide variety of identities to commiserate about loneliness and support one another in times of emotional turmoil, overall showing the positive implications of the growth of the internet in the late 90s. It also is where the term incel was coined. While it took many years for them to take control, the misogynists had been present from the start, and a decade later were starting to take over some of the more popular successors to Alana's original site, as well as making new sites of their own. The trick was to shift the conversation from mutual support and self improvement to one of evolutionary psychology, and promote one upmanship surrounding increasingly violent demands for violence and hate. Identity 12. I am white. Stoicism. Dampening emotional responses has certainly been a useful skill for me many times over the years. When my father and I had been tasked with delivering a cake that had been ordered from my mother's at home business, one of the turns was a little too steep and the cake suffered some damage. My dad, reasonably, began to panic, but I was able to remain calm and made sure we did what few fixes we could before dropping it off. And everything turned out fine, even if the cake did have a solid dent where the fondant was torn. A couple people have told me that they really appreciate having someone that they can rely on to be stable when everything else is hectic. But I do wonder if by making sure that I remain so stable, am I making it harder to feel emotions when I should? Is my lack of grief natural or the result of accidental self harm? Does it make it harder for me to understand where others are coming from? Identity 14. I am a Stoic. United. A number of years back, Dean Robinson at Hell's Kitchen's Facing History High School began a mentoring group where male students could talk about their successes, their failures, and their plans, and help them build a support network of their peers. It also served as an opportunity to unpack the sexism and privileges of masculinity that had gone previously unquestioned in their lives. The program is still going as far as I can tell, and is one that I wish I had had the opportunity to have when I was of that age. It also makes me wonder what my blind spots are and who to turn to help find them. Identity 10. I am a lover. Mimic. In my formative years of middle school, when I noticed my living on the outskirts, I looked around for examples to follow. This skill is still a valuable one as an actor, for I am frequently watching those around me, their body language, pace, gait, all of the tics that I need to express if I am to play a character truthfully. Of course, I always hope that my gaze remains unobserved. For in some ways, it is very predatory. And that kind of evaluative gaze uh, cannot help but be associated with centuries of white men who have used their gazes to uh, dominate others. At the time, the high schoolers in my Boy Scout troop were the ones who could remain at the center of any conversation they wanted. So even if in some ways I didn't like them, I certainly sought to emulate them in other ways. Identity 5. I am a friend to some. Example. There are so many people I could follow the example of. Who is the right one to choose? There are so many different expressions of what it means to live in this society, in this age. Will that person's puffed chest help me maintain better posture? Or will it cause my shoulders to rub against my backpack straps even more? Or will it do both? Identity 4. I am an engineer. Avocado. Oh, identity. As an artist, I sometimes find myself confronted with the classics of Greek theater. They were able to create pieces that, while grounded in their own times, still speak true millennia later. How am I supposed to create work that will stand the test of time? If I ground it in myself about my experiences, then maybe others who find themselves experiencing life similarly will sift them from the muck. But what makes my life, my experience, more special than anyone else's on the street? This also implies a certainty of self that I'm not sure I will ever possess. Identity 15. I am a person who has inflicted great pain due to my carelessness. Identity 8. I am a brother. Identity 2. I am an actor. Identity 7. I am a son. Identity 9. I am a mentor. Identity 11. I am a pacifist. Avocado. While writing this, by algorithmic quirk, I encountered an article about a vlogger that I had not heard of before, named Nikocado Avocado. Nikocado is among the more popular vloggers in the mukbang world, with the majority of his videos focusing on him consuming food while talking about his life, cooking, YouTube drama, etc. Part of his notoriety derives from his eating of incredibly large portions over the course of his videos, which has led to him gaining hundreds of pounds over the past half decade of his career. And while I have no desire to pry into his medical history, I can only imagine the various health complications that he has gained over the duration. The portion of society that is interested in mukbangs engaged with him, at least in part, because of his larger portion sizes than his peers. And this led to a feedback loop whereby the more engagement he would receive, and the more revenue he would earn. Purpose. How is it so hard to find examples of traditions of masculinity that are not toxic? I've internally explored other identities than that of quote unquote man, but none of them ever felt quite right. Being a man is built on a history of violence and domination and unhealthy relationships with the self. Am I supposed to just cut that aspect of myself off? If I do, what do I do? What do I replace it with? If not, how do I make sure it never begins to twist towards the cruel ideologies that it seems likely to produce? Identity 13. I am a pansexual. Identity 0. I am. End? I believe that the answer to finding a new positive masculinity is to build one through critical observation and ongoing dialogue. But while the media frequently produces works that are critical of masculinity, there aren't many that try to create new models that one might aspire towards. So, maybe if by working with others to construct a me that fits well, and I create a version that can find the right balance of meeting expectation and being an individual, then it might help someone else be better than I could ever be. At the very least, some practice of working with others to build one up can't hurt.